Picture a territory the size of Colorado, mostly desert, with massive phosphate mines and rich fishing waters. This is the Western Sahara, a region on Africa's Atlantic coast that has been locked in one of the world's longest running conflicts. Yet, it remains largely unknown to most people. In 2025, the dispute over Western Sahara marks its 50th anniversary. And while there is still no resolution in sight, a few recent developments have breathed new life into this long frozen conflict. In 2012, that shifted diplomatic dynamics. More recently, the growing global demand for phosphates, which are essential to making fertilizer, has increased the economic stakes. Also, the end of a 30-year ceasefire in November 2020 highlighted the fragility of the situation. And finally, rising geopolitical competition across North Africa has drawn major powers into the region. The Western Sahara sits between Morocco, Algeria, and Mauritania. Today, Morocco controls approximately 75% of the territory, with the remaining portion held by the Polisario Front as the self-proclaimed Sahrawi Democratic Republic, or Sadr. Algeria, sharing a border with the Western Sahara, has been the Polisario's primary supporter and hosts Sadr's government in exile. Before that, for nearly a century, the Western Sahara was a Spanish colony. In 1975, as Spain prepared to withdraw, both Morocco and Mauritania claimed the territory based on historical ties. Morocco's claim was based on pre-colonial history when Moroccan ruled the Sahara. Their primary argument centered on traditional ties between the Sultan of Morocco and some Sahrawi tribes through the Bay'ah, or Pledge of Allegiance, that certain tribes gave to the Sultan. Mauritania's claims were based on different cultural and historical grounds. Many Sahrawi nomadic tribes migrated between what is now the Western Sahara and Mauritania, with some tribes having stronger ties to Mauritanian populations, especially the Moorish communities that share the Hassaniya Arabic dialect and cultural practices. The Moors, a mixed Arab-Berber ethnic group that settled North Africa between the 11th and 17th century, often maintained nomadic lifestyles with tribal connections extending beyond modern borders, complicating territorial claims in Asia. Competing claims were brought before the International Court of Justice. The court acknowledged the historical and cultural ties, but ruled they were insufficient to establish sovereignty, affirming that the Sahrawi people should be allowed to determine their own future. Despite the ruling, Morocco proceeded with its plans to claim the territory. In November 1975, it organized the Green March, sending 350,000 civilians across the border, followed by military forces to symbolically claim the land. Shortly thereafter, Spain signed the Madrid Accords with Morocco and Mauritania, transferring administrative control of the Western Sahara to the two countries. The Sahrawi independent movement, led by the Polisario Front, resisted this move and began to fight both Morocco and Mauritania. The Polisario then, backed by Algeria and to some extent Libya's Muammar Gaddafi, declared the establishment of the Sahrawi Arab Democratic government in exile. With the fighting ongoing, thousands of Sahrawis fled to Algeria, establishing refugee camps still exist today. In 1960, after several military, Mauritania withdrew claim to the territory, leaving Morocco in conflict with the Algerian Polisario. Algeria's support stems from ideological and strategic interests. Ideologically, Algeria fought a long decolonization battle against France and has, as such, historically supported self-determination movements. Strategically, Algeria has an interest in keeping Morocco, against which it fought a border war in 1963, embroiled in conflict. The situation continued like this until 1991, when after 16 years of guerrilla warfare, the UN brokered a ceasefire on the promise of a referendum for the Sahrawi people to determine their future. This vote never materialized. Meanwhile, Morocco built the berm, a 1,700-mile wall fortified with military installations and minefields that physically divides the territory. Morocco controls the western portion, while the Polisario controls a sparsely populated eastern zone. West of the Berm, over 5 decades, Morocco has invested billions in transforming the portion of Turnsa, a modern center with ports and airports and highways, and created economic opportunities that have attracted Moroccan settlers, changing the demographics of the region. It integrated the territory into Moroccan banking, telecommunications, and transportation systems. And it developed phosphate mining operations and fishing industries that are now crucial to Morocco's economy. And it has been developing significant renewable energy projects, particularly wind and solar facilities. For Morocco, the Western Sahara represents a territory, but a multi-generational national project thoroughly integrated into its economic and political systems. East of the Berm, the Polisario Front controls the area and oversees the refugee camps that Algeria hosts. These camps, where an estimated 175,000 Sahrawis have lived for decades, face harsh conditions with limited resources and dependency on international aid. Despite these challenges, the camps have developed their own governance structure and social services. Meanwhile, a younger generation of Sahrawis are growing increasingly frustrated with their circumstances, putting pressure on the Polisario leadership to show progress through negotiations or to return to armed conflict. Throughout these decades, the Polisario option will resolve the conflict. On the international stage, Algeria is still the Polisario's strongest supporter, consistently raising the Western Sahara issue at forums like the UN and the African Union. The Western Sahara is an important of the held hostility and tensions leading to diplomatic, most recently in 2021. Because in 2020, the United States recognized Morocco's sovereignty over the Western Sahara as part of an agreement that included Morocco normalizing relations with Israel. This was a huge diplomatic win for Morocco. But Morocco has other powerful supporters, including France and Spain. The rest of the international community, however, is divided. So in this complex diplomatic landscape, the issue is at an impasse. The UN, which has mediated between the parties since 1976, including has took a resolution after numerous rounds of negotiations. And this deadlock remains because the gap between parties is so large. Whether the status of the region should be resolved by holding a referendum that includes independence as an option, or by giving Sahrawis autonomy under Moroccan sovereignty. Morocco and its backers support the latter, while the Polisario demands a referendum. Tensions periodically flare up, as they did in late 2020, when the ceasefire collapsed following a Polisario blockade of a key road, the Guerguerat border crossing, and Morocco's subsequent military response. A low-level intensity conflict has been going on since. The long dormant conflict is once again challenging regional stability. So why should you care? The Western Sahara matters globally for several reasons. First is food. The territory produces phosphate, and Morocco ranks as one of the world's producers. The global food security challenge increasing these sources of agriculture worldwide. Second is geopolitics. Algeria and Morocco's rivalry has transformed the Western Sahara issue into a proxy conflict. Major powers, including the US, France, Russia, and China, have strategic interest in North Africa, including the Western Sahara. France has pledged investments worth billions of euros in renewable and port infrastructure. China is interested in expanding its fishing cooperation with Morocco into the territory and is exploring joint development of renewable energy ventures. This shows how a once frozen conflict can become a potential arena for economic competition. The third reason is regional stability. The unresolved conflict and the potential for gradual radicalization as the issue festers. And a final reason this conflict is important is international norms. The situation tests fundamental principles of international relations: self-determination versus territorial integrity, the role of power politics versus international law, and the effectiveness of multilateral institutions. As the Western Sahara conflict reaches the half-century mark, several big questions remain unanswered. Who has the legitimate right to determine the territory's future? What roles should historical claims, current control, indigenous rights, and economic development play in any resolution? And more important, is a comprehensive solution still possible after 50 years of entrenchment? The Western Sahara may be a conflict most people have never heard of, but at its core are important questions about sovereignty, resources, and human rights that resonate worldwide.
Okay, hello everyone. Hope that video wasn't a little bit too long for you guys. I thought it was relevant to play all of it because, like she was saying at the end there, it's been going on for about 50 years and most people don't really know about it at all. Never heard of it. So my little fair use disclaimer on the bottom says we're going to intend to comment and critique on that video. However, I don't really have my critique of that video is that it was perfect. There's nothing to critique about it. You know, perfectly sums up the problem that in the way that I'm looking to kick off my discussion here, because frankly, the other developments with the Alliance of Sahel States in connection with this issue is somewhat disconcerting for me. A little bit of like a 4D chess kind of thing. If we're going to be giving the AES the benefit of the doubt that they are anti-imperialist, as they say, when they are welcoming the US back to Mali and saying that this is a win-win for both of them. That's very much, I don't know about a red flag, it's certainly an orange flag. It's a little bit of a what the fuck's going on here. So I think it's time to talk about it. So how's it going, Old Man Barker, John Kemper, Jacqueline, and CBC, and Extra Bulla? Thank you for joining me. Abby is a little bit busy today. She's found out a little bit last minute that her brother invited her to her niece's, I think it's her 16th birthday. So she said she will be able to be here for a little bit, but she's running a little late. So she said just get started without her, and she won't be able to hang out for long. She's gonna have to leave in an hour to go to that birthday party. So congratulations, happy birthday, Abby's niece. I'm not sure what her name is, but it's all good. I can handle this discussion here. So let me go to my first little article here. It's not really so much an article as it is just a little bit of a press briefer. So I thought this was a good place to start because this is sort of like a broader picture of all the things going on in Africa, and then we'll kind of focus in a little bit. So this is just to sort of show that this is all mostly connected, even though they are discussed as if they are separate conflicts. This is the U.S. footprint, like all over the continent of Africa here. So there is, from February 16, 2026, military buildup in northern Ethiopia, U.S.-linked personnel in the DRC and Nigeria, South Sudan slide to civil war, which we covered last week, and so the Ethiopian federal government has begun a military buildup near Tigray region in the aftermath of recent clashes, indicating preparations for an expanded and prolonged war in northern Ethiopia that would involve Eritrea. A war in Tigray would likely become another arena in the regional proxy war in the Red Sea involving Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE. Democratic Republic of the Congo, a U.S.-linked private military company, is reportedly supporting an ongoing Congolese army offensive against militias aligned with Rwandan-backed M23 rebels in the South Kivu highlands in the eastern DRC. The deployment of contractors from Vectis Global, a PMC linked to American citizen Eric Prince, to the front line is a notable expansion of U.S. involvement in the conflict and is part of growing cooperation between the PMC and the Congolese government since late 2024. The South Sudanese federal government and leading opposition faction are on the verge of sparking renewed civil war amid recent large-scale battles. The ongoing trial of opposition leader, First Vice President Riek Machar, could escalate the battles into a civil war, which would have a devastating humanitarian impact and allow the warring parties in neighboring Sudan's civil war to exploit the instability. And the U.S. military will deploy 200 troops to Nigeria in the coming weeks in the latest step in growing counterterrorism cooperation between the U.S. and Nigeria, which is responding to one of the deadliest Salafi jihadist attacks in years. And if we will remember, the thing that the Alliance of Sahel states was so mad about with France is because they felt that France was backing up the jihadists that they were claiming to fight the counter-terrorist fight against. And they seem to be of the opinion that the U.S. is not... Oh, sorry. You guys, can you hear me? Sorry. It just says... Oh, it's my screen share audio, not my audio. Okay. I was just saying, it seems, I don't know if it's 4D chess that they're playing with the Americans or if they're just naive to believe that the French are capable of pretending to fight terrorists while actually being the ones causing the terrorist problem. But what they're doing here is agreeing to work. The Anti-Imperialist AES is agreeing to work with the U.S. on terrorism cooperation. So I'm sorry that I can't be as much of a cheerleader for who all the other online media commentators like to sort of say that we shouldn't necessarily be critical of these regimes because they're anti-imperialist. But what does anti-imperialism look like? What is it? What is it in actuality? You know, there's words and then there's actions, right? So I guess the U.S. is anti-imperialist when they're fighting terrorists. The U.S. looks to revitalize relations with Mali with envoy visit to Bamako. This was from the 4th of February. Nick Checker, head of the U.S. State Department's Bureau of African Affairs, visited Mali on Monday, calling for renewed economic and security cooperation between Washington and Bamako. Nick Checker, the newly appointed head of the U.S. State Department's Bureau of African Affairs, arrived in Bamako on Monday for an official visit where Foreign Minister Abdoulaye Diop welcomed him. The leaders focused their discussions on two main issues: resuming bilateral cooperation, particularly in the fight against terrorism, and strengthening economic and trade relations between Mali and the United States. Trade, not aid. Diop told news agencies that no official statement would be issued concerning Checker's visit, but it coincides with U.S. President Donald Trump's pivot to a trade, not aid foreign policy approach. Trump has slashed foreign assistance, including dismantling the U.S. Agency for International Development. Mali is known to be mineral rich with substantial reserves in gold, lithium, and uranium. According to the official statement from Malian authorities, both sides view the reactivation of their relations as a win-win partnership. Fighting jihadism. Checker emphasized his country's respect for Mali's sovereignty and added that the American desire to revitalize bilateral cooperation with Bamako came without any form of interference. Okay, then, if you believe that, I've got a bridge to sell you in Brooklyn. And this respect for Mali's sovereignty, I find a little bit disingenuous, at the very least, okay? Because they can claim that Maduro is a dictator when he is elected by his people in an election that was by many international, very credible international observers that election did have integrity, unlike American elections. And then Mali's not trying to deny that they acquired their governance through a coup. And of course, this particular coup, America is not going to deny as a violation of sovereignty. And then we look at Myanmar, where that military junta took power from the democratic person that they were trying to get into power. I forget her name, Aung San Suu Kyi or something. So I'm just saying, there's all this hypocrisy, all that pragmatism, international law, international norms don't mean anything. Anti-colonialism, anti-imperialism doesn't actually mean anything. Pragmatism is the only thing. Multipolarity, whatever, neoconservatism, it's all that matters, apparently. That's what it seems like to me, but that's maybe my bias. So, a diplomat at the U.S. Embassy in Bamako told news agencies on condition of anonymity that the United States sees how the jihadists are settling in the Sahel and wants to prevent escalations. So a little bit like the, it's like, that's a nice jihadist problem you got there. I wouldn't want anything to happen to it, kind of thing, right? It's like, that's a nice Sahel you got there. Wouldn't want anything to happen to it. A Malian diplomat, also on condition of anonymity, said that Washington's envoy had come to make an offer of services to AES countries to see under what conditions the United States can get involved in the fight against jihadists in the Sahel. What conditions you can get involved with is to fuck off and not get involved. That's the conditions that's how the U.S. fights jihadists in the Sahel, by staying the fuck away. And that's how we know that you're not fucking involved. Except, you're all U.S. is always involved. So they're just completely categorically untrustworthy, particularly concerning the recent developments, wherever, all the bombings they've done across Africa and whatnot. So let's welcome them with open arms. It's a win-win. Among the conditions of U.S. involvement are the return to constitutional order and the end of the Africa Corps contract. So the conditions for their involvement is an end of the juntas, whatever they want, the democratic, whatever, the return to democracy, and they want the end of Russian involvement in the jihadist fight. So you kicked out France and started trusting the Russians because they're more trustworthy, but now in this transactional approach, I guess whether the Americans are more trustworthy or not, a bargain is to be made here. It does not seem to be tactically intelligent at all, but I'm sure that they are much more educated in that kind of thing, whatever, these army people. I got no idea about that kind of stuff. But Mali has been gripped by a security crisis since 2012, fueled notably by violence pitting the military against groups affiliated with Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State group, which we have known connections to the U.S. and Israel, and the actions of criminal gangs. So the visit also comes at a time when Russia is exerting greater influence in the region, including supplying mercenaries from its Africa Corps to help combat jihadists. Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger have cultivated closer relations with Russia since their military leaders took power in a series of coups between 2020 and 2023, cutting ties with the West. And apparently they feel the need maybe for some kind of balancing, a little bit of a countermeasure against Russian or Chinese influence, because, well, maybe everyone else is unconcerned about some kind of neo-colonial kind of neo-imperialist sort of behavior from the BRICS. Maybe these AES people are having some reservations because they are a little bit closer to the situation than we are. So, resuming security cooperation. The U.S. Bureau of African Affairs, which is part of the State Department, said last week it also planned to consult other governments in the region, including military-run Burkina Faso and Niger, on shared security and economic interests. Let me just make sure, that you are not having any audio issues. You're all still there, so thank you. While welcoming this approach, U.S. Bureau said last week it planned to consult other governments in the region. While welcoming this approach, Malian Foreign Minister Diop nevertheless emphasized that this dynamic would have to take into account the regional context, and in particular, the establishment of the Alliance of Sahel States. So this regional context, I feel, is kind of what I'm wanting to get into as far as the issue with the Polisario front, because they're emphasizing that this dynamic has to take into account that they're of their sovereignty, while they're sitting there with their anti-imperialist rhetoric, sort of watching and intentionally allowing the Polisario front to be crippled and disintegrated. To me, that's not okay, I feel, but that's some kind of purity fetish, I guess. The U.S. security cooperation with the three countries had been curtailed since the coups, but last month, the deputy commander of U.S. AFRICOM, Lieutenant General John Brennan, told French news service AFP that Washington wanted to collaborate further. We have actually shared information with some of them to attack key terrorist targets. Oh, so they're already relying on their assistance to attack key terrorist targets. We still talk to our military partners across the Sahel states, even though it's not official. So maybe I'm being a little bit too clutching my pearls over this. Or let's see. Because there's a lot of moving pieces here. One thing I noticed John Kemper was saying, France is done. They kicked out everywhere. Well, not exactly. There's a little bit of it's too good to be true apparently for France to finally be done with Africa. It seems that because of the decaying American hegemony, the potential breaking apart and collapse of NATO, that France is being given a little bit of a stay of execution here. Let's see. We'll have to get into the information as opposed to maybe speculation. So, Ellie Game Dog, good to see you. Never seen you around here before. Welcome. Please like, share, and subscribe if you like what you're hearing. The Sahel Alliance not fucking with Americans ain't nothing on paper. Where is your source that the AES has dropped Russia for America and you and lying white devil? I'm tapping brothers from the Sahel. You lying, I'm in America. You definitely lying. The AES embrace America. Not lying. I'm getting into the information. They're the ones who said the AES, wherever, who met with the Americans just now, are the ones who said it's a win-win situation for them to re-engage with America. But what is that thing that we the well-repeated refrain? It is dangerous to be America's enemy, but it is deadly to be America's friend or ally, right? That has been proven time and time again. So anyway, the United States accelerates the pace for an agreement between Morocco and Algeria on the Sahara. Washington is the scene of contacts between the two nations at odds over the Sahrawi issue, with U.S. mediation and the participation of the Polisario Front, Mauritania, and the UN. Washington was a location chosen for a new round of high-level talks between the main parties involved in the Western Sahara issue: Morocco, Algeria, the Polisario Front, Mauritania, and the United Nations, with U.S. mediation. I wouldn't call it mediation, I would call it coercion. The U.S. is trying to further accelerate the pace of reaching an agreement on the Western Sahara issue, which has been ongoing for 5 decades since the end of Spanish colonial rule. To this end, following talks held in Madrid with the same parties involved, organized by the U.S. Embassy in the Spanish capital, a new round of talks was organized in Washington, attended by representatives from Morocco, Algeria, Mauritania, and the Polisario Front, together with Staffan de Mistura, the UN Secretary General's Special Envoy for Western Sahara, and Massad Boulos, the Trump administration's Special Envoy for Africa. During the round of talks held in Madrid, an agreement was reached to accept Morocco's autonomy plan for Western Sahara as a technical basis. This is not a good development. The mere presence of the Polisario Front and its great supporter, Algeria, in the Spanish capital showed that the side advocating a referendum on independence for the Sahrawi population could reach an agreement with the opposing side led by Morocco, which considers the Sahrawi territory part of the southern provinces under the sovereignty of the Moroccan kingdom, accepting Morocco's autonomy plan as the most solid basis for reaching an agreement. I think that this is a bit of a misdirecting statement to say that the mere fact that the Polisario Front has decided to show up at the meeting shows that they could reach an agreement. It shows that they are willing to be open-minded and diplomatic, just much like how Hamas has been willing to maintain these talks with Israel in spite of knowing how they're really not designed to accomplish anything. I would imagine that after 50 years, the Polisario Front's leadership is rather wise to the situation. So the presence of the same participants in Washington for a meeting supervised by the United States and the UN itself The UN itself, which betrayed the Polisario or betrayed the Sahrawi people, because the international community had recognized that the colonial claim to the territory was illegitimate, and yet its toothlessness in so many other places in the world, whatever, this being one of them, is just demonstrated completely perfectly with this situation. Wherever they do not represent international law, they represent the caricature of international law. And the problem that the global population has is the UN's credibility is still, it still has some kind of credibility in the minds of propagandized people around the world. But anyone who understands the corruption and like the evil nature of the UN recognizes that its reputation is in tatters, that it's incapable of delivering any kind of justice or whatever. So the United States gave its clear support to the Moroccan initiative. Stop it, Bella. 1 second. Sorry. The United States gave its clear support to the Moroccan initiative as the most serious, credible, and realistic option for resolving the Sahrawi dispute. There it is, that realistic conservatism. Okay, I'm going to have to get into that soon. That's an important thing to understand, is this realism, this conservatism posing as realism that even a lot of Marxists seem to be falling into. Well, you know, you have to be pragmatic, you got to be realistic, even though all that ends up being is some kind of like imperialistic way of looking at the world, really, geopolitics. So the great game of imperialism has to be played out wherever. Cannot be, you can't win by not playing, but you can't win by playing, because only imperialists are allowed to play that game. So so this is what they're trying to do. Like the support endorsed by more than 100 countries. Well, you know what? The situation in Gaza's got support by more than 100 countries, but apparently that doesn't matter to the U.S. and Israel, right? The entire world could be against them, and consensus doesn't matter. But in this case, all of a sudden, consensus matters. So don't be naive, people. Okay, that's bullshit. So it's already endorsed by more than 100 countries, including France, the UK, the United Arab Emirates, Germany, and Spain, all a bunch of neo-colonial imperialistic powers, and is pressing for an agreement to be reached on the basis of the Moroccan autonomy proposal. In addition, at the end of October, the UN Security Council unanimously approved, with China and Russia abstaining. So how do you have a unanimous approval when they abstain? You don't. Fuck you. To classify Morocco's autonomy as the most solid basis for, and so they get us to repeat this as if it, whatever, so it will sink in, or whatever, this most solid basis, whatever. There's nothing solid about this at all. It's just completely disregarding, whatever, the right to self-determination of the Sahrawi people until they are so badly abused and in a desperate situation that they're going to accept an agreement that's not an agreement. So this new round of talks, taking place on the 23rd and 24th of February, a couple days ago in Washington, shows that the United States is continuing to step up the pace to reach an agreement based on Morocco's autonomy plan as the most solid basis for an agreement. However, that's like the third, fourth time they said that, right? So Donald Trump, with his whole board of peace, kind of, he really is trying to make people believe he's that peace president, but he is, his peace is a colonial peace. His peace is a Pax Americana, kind of Pax Judaica, Greater Israel kind of peace. It's not peace. This acceleration of U.S. action is not part of traditional mediation, but rather reflects a political decision to redesign the negotiation process and set a clear ceiling for negotiations based on the approach proposed by Rabat as the only applicable framework, namely Morocco's autonomy plan for Western Sahara, as was made clear at the Washington summit. So the only applicable framework is by one of the conflicting parties that has a conflict of interest. So they cannot be the one who sets the framework because they are not neutral. It's fucking ridiculous. Morocco proposes a formula of broad autonomy for Western Sahara under Moroccan sovereignty. Autonomy without sovereignty is not autonomy. that would grant the Sahrawis a high degree of self-government, leaving foreign and defense policy in the hands of Moroccan state. You don't have self-government if you don't have your own foreign and defense policy. Not talking to children, you guys understand what I'm talking about, right? It's obvious to anyone who understands what sovereignty means. That's what all that stuff about, oh, Iran can't give up because they need their defense policy and foreign policy in their hands, right? So the North African country's objective is to develop the area to its full potential and protect its national integrity, as it has been arguing for decades that Western Sahara is part of its southern provinces. So then this is what they get to deny the end of colonialism in the name of national integrity of a fucking kingdom that should be torn apart. Okay, there should be no more monarchies, but apparently it's important for the very democratic American and British system to maintain the importance, the relevance, the viability, the legitimacy of monarchism. Okay, and so the average person today needs to recognize that if they are some kind of a supporter of democracy, a supporter of republicanism in general, not the kind of poisoned understanding of what a republic is that you get because of America claiming to be a republic or claiming to be a democracy, right? Everyone recognizes that monarchy is not democracy, and that you don't have sovereignty if the sovereignty is vested in the personage of a royal figure. That is that family taking sovereignty away from the nation itself, from the people of the nation. It's why people fought against monarchies for the past centuries, couple centuries, right? And it's very disgusting and disturbing to see that the monarchies that have only survived today because they were propped up by the American empire are having a kind of resurgence in relevance because the lack of understanding that anti-colonialism is an inherent part of Marxism, right? You cannot have one without the other. There's a kind of strange, like, ideological degeneration, maybe degeneracy that's happened here, where we think we can have our cake and eat it too. You know, American Communist Party cannot be explicitly anti-colonialist, then they cannot be the Marxists that they claim they are, right? Because then their words are completely hollow about national liberation. Okay, you want to talk about like double standards for national liberation for Palestine and the Western Sahara completely invalidates your ideological position. Okay, I'm standing strong on that one. So on the other side, so they gave that whole article talking about how whatever the only solid basis for an agreement, whatever, and they give this Polisario front one paragraph at the end. Okay, on the other side is the pro-independence Polisario front, supported by Algeria, Morocco's great rival in the Maghreb, which advocates holding a referendum on independence for the Sahrawi population. This option has less international support now. It had more international support until the UN betrayed its mandate, like it always does, and waited until international support was coerced away from, you know, just like it's happened, just like it could be happening with Gaza there, where all the international support was there to demonize Israel, and the moment came to do the right thing, and it passed, and we'll see what happens, right? So it faces this is the worst part. It faces difficulties in being carried out. What, this referendum on independence due to various problems such as the creation of an electoral roll. Oh, it's just so hard to make an electoral roll given the dispersion of the Sahrawi population between those living in, because they're forced into that fucking desert because of that wall, that concentration camp that they've been, that just like Gaza is a fucking outdoor concentration camp. There is another one in Western Sahara, okay? And so, and because there's the refugee population in Algeria. So you're saying because their populations are split up or whatever, that you can't have a fucking voting process? You're full of shit, okay? You just don't want to acknowledge that this is actually the more viable solution. But time and time again or whatever, you got to listen to like the white Europeans and the people who support them, like the fucking Moroccans, who are settlers, by the way, in case you forget from the beginning of the video there, or whatever, right? So the difficulties such as the creation of an electoral roll, given the dispersion of the Sahrawi population between those living in the so-called southern provinces of Morocco and those living in refugee camps in Algeria who suffer harsh living conditions, as various analysts have pointed out. All right, that's the end of that one. So before I move on to the next one, let me see how you guys are doing. I don't know what you're saying, Sean. Probably just some advertisement, whatever. Is that who wrote that article? Scarika Kirk, what's up? God came to me and said we should invade Iran. Yeah, God came to them and said Western Sahara doesn't deserve self-determination. So let's move on here. I was hoping that Abby might be here by now, but if she's not here much sooner, then she might not be able to be here for tonight, but that's okay. So this is where we're going to, I'm going to maybe need to do a good amount of reading to establish kind of the big picture of what's going on here, and then other people can decide for themselves, whatever, whether I am a white devil lying about Sahel states embracing America. I don't know if it's probably a bit of an overstatement to say that they're embracing America. I'm telling you that they're being this neocon, ultra pragmatist, ultra transactional, and when you're like that, your ideology is a front. It's not real. Okay, you can claim that you're anti-imperialist, whatever, but we need to have that critical theory, that critical thinking that is integral to the Marxist process there, in order to understand, you can say all you want or whatever, but you are in control of a state, and the Marxist stuff is about the power of the people. Okay, so have you established a dictatorship of the proletariat, or have you established a dictatorship? It is not wrong for us to ask the question critically and to do the actual analysis and observation required to answer the question accurately and fairly, or else you just take their word for it that they have established a dictatorship of the proletariat. And if they have not, in fact, then what you are doing is ignoring the people who are continuing to be oppressed and dispossessed of their authority in the name of believing the ideal that they have claimed, that they are what they say they are. So the EU looks to Morocco to rebuild ties with Sahel states. This was from May 30th, 2025. So I wanted to kind of get this article in because the EU and the US are making, and France, they're making a big show about not being aligned with each other anymore. And yet, if you keep looking a little bit at the details, it still seems like their interests are still aligning here. Both the US and the EU are still supporting Morocco, over Algeria and the Western Sahara and whatnot. And so if the EU is really working against the US now, making a decisive break because they're being tariffed and exposed as not really allied, because the US is just trying to use them like everyone else. And if the EU had any fucking sense, they would drop their fascism and they would drop their obsession with American imperialism and they would reclaim their sovereignty. But because the EU has been fucking colonizers for such a long time or whatever, that's like become their identity, they have a hard time giving up on past glory. Well, boo fucking who. Apparently I'm a little bit pissed off today. But this kind of shit it doesn't piss you off. Apparently you're not paying attention. So EU looks to Morocco to rebuild ties with Sahel states. France is part of the EU. Just wanted to make sure everyone realizes these very obvious facts, okay? Morocco's deepening ties with Sahel states reflect a strategic pivot toward South-South cooperation, but give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe it's 4D chess, okay? Their deepening ties with the Sahel states reflect a strategic pivot toward South-South cooperation, positioning the country as a linchpin for stability, trade, and Atlantic access in an increasingly contested region. Well, you know what you would get Atlantic access from? Supporting the Western Sahara. But anyway, that would involve kicking out the settlers who are occupying the coast, though. The European Union is seeking to harness Morocco's established regional influence to restore its deteriorating relationships with Sahel countries, as evidenced by EU Special Representative João Cravino's diplomatic visit to Rabat on Friday. Joe Craven. Moroccan Foreign Minister Nasser Bourita welcomed Cravino in high-level talks that underscored the strategic potential for coordinated initiatives between the EU and Morocco in addressing the multifaceted challenges confronting the Sahel region. The EU maintains a fruitful, very strong relationship with Morocco with multiple dimensions. Cravino stated during his press briefing after the meeting, he stressed that partnership with Morocco represents a priority of great importance for the European bloc. Morocco's friendship with AES members solidifies its strategic appeal. The diplomat particularly valued Morocco's connections with Sahel countries, describing them as a very important source of knowledge, understanding, and identification of joint work paths for the benefit of the Sahel peoples. That's a bit of strangely worded. It sounds like a grammatical error. A very important source of knowledge, understanding, and identification of joint work paths for the benefit of the Sahel peoples. Okay, that's just weird. Cravino acknowledged the dual vulnerabilities affecting the Sahel region, both security and socioeconomic instability, characterizing these as substantial hurdles requiring coordinated intervention from both the EU and Morocco. The aim of my visit is to explore ways to deepen the relationship between the European Union and Morocco concerning the Sahel region to achieve common objectives of peace and security for the benefit of the populations in this region. Now, what they're doing is just a visit and just talking wherever without agreements, wherever, then I could be making a mountain out of a molehill. However, other articles do show that that the AES has made something of an opening of ties with Morocco, probably to counter and have leverage with Algeria, which they have a complicated history with. So, since taking office in November 2024, Cravino has worked to rebuild EU relations with Sahel countries where military juntas have assumed control. He had previously outlined this diplomatic approach during his February consultations in Niamey. The geopolitical landscape of the region has undergone profound transformation since Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger formally withdrew from ECOWAS on January 29th. Following their departure, these countries have intensified the development of the AES, now structured as a sovereign confederation. This new entity aims to strengthen their political, economic, and security autonomy outside traditional West African frameworks, with the AES having already launched a common biometric passport, abolished telephone roaming charges, and adopted a common official anthem. Biometric passport. So the Great Reset is not imperialist. Okay. Morocco's cordial relations with these Sahel states position it as an instrumental facilitator in Cravino's diplomatic mission. Morocco's diplomatic weight was evident in December 2024 when King Mohammed VI's mediation led to the release of 4 French intelligence agents held in Burkina Faso. Following this diplomatic success, Macron personally contacted the monarch to express his gratitude for the North African country's crucial role in securing their freedom. I'm sure that African monarch expressed his gratitude for French patronage that has preserved the existence of the monarchy. Without it, it would not still exist. Morocco is both an aspirational economic hub and the guardian of regional integration. Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, and Chad have all endorsed the royal initiative aiming to provide Sahel states with Atlantic Ocean access. Guess you gotta kiss the hand when it comes down to it, just if you need it, if you need that access. In a noteworthy diplomatic development, King Mohammed VI received the foreign ministers of Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso on April the 28th. This high-level meeting occurred amid escalating regional tensions, particularly between the Sahel countries and Algeria. In early April, Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso recalled their ambassadors from Algiers, accusing Algeria of downing a Malian drone near the Algerian border in late March. Now, this situation is pretty convoluted because while they did have this dispute with Algeria, I'm going to get to it soon, they've also had something of a rapprochement with Algeria. This is what I'm saying. I think that what their tactic is here is to be open to the balancing act of negotiating with both sides as a way of having pressure on the side that they really want to make a deal with, and they're not necessarily going to reveal their cards until they're played them. So the economic aspects of Morocco's Sahel engagement are equally compelling. Currently, Moroccan exports to the 4 AES countries total approximately 300 million, while the overall trade potential reaches an estimated 2.23 billion, indicating a realization rate of merely 11.44%. Capitalists saying there's so much money to be made here. Come on, can't we make a deal? For the EU, collaboration with Morocco offers a pragmatic avenue to re-engagement with a region where its influence has declined. Observers note that Morocco has emerged as a trusted intermediary in regional diplomacy, maintaining productive relations with both European powers and the new leadership in Sahel countries. The Dakhla and Jamina Corridor Initiative represents a key pillar in Morocco's strategy to promote economic integration and regional cohesion. Designed to go beyond a simple transport route, the project aims to establish a full-fledged economic development corridor that boosts trade and unlocks opportunities for landlocked Sahelian countries. Central to this vision is the Atlantic port of Dakhla, expected to be operational by 2029. The megaport is projected to handle up to 35 million tons of cargo annually and offer secure Atlantic access to Sahel-Saharan countries. Amid ongoing geopolitical recalibrations across the Sahel, Morocco's measured diplomacy and growing strategic capital have made it an indispensable interlocutor, uniquely positioned to bridge European interests with Sahelian imperatives in a region fraught with volatility and competing influence. So now that we have gotten to this subject of the Atlantic port of Dakhla expected to be operational by 2029, I wanted to play a little video here. Maybe give me a chance to rest my voice and show you that it's kind of all about the corridors. It's all about the pipelines. So let's check in with you guys, see what you've been saying. Thanks, Jack. Can these sock puppet accounts remember to press the like button? Thank you. Yes. Please like, share, and subscribe if you are appreciating content here. And Jack's saying, blame the US, the UK, and the EU for probably putting pressure on these countries or states behind the scenes, and probably threatening them with sanctions or military action. Yep. And that's the whole thing about if you're going to do a coup to take over your country, you should be fully aware that that pressure is very much incoming as soon as you take power. And if you're not able to deal with it, if you're just going to bend to it, then the whole thing about convincing your people to die for a coup, it's is that the right strategy or whatever? Or that's the way to take people's hope or whatever and use it to get yourself in power so that you can be the next comprador. So it's incredibly important, actually, the whole anti-imperialist, like Marxist, the struggle against the empire, you know, like the ideology, the discipline to maintain it and not stray. Because if you do, you kind of betray your people, or whatever. You betray your nation for short-term gain that seems to be absolutely necessary or whatever, right? Because when you take power or whatever, you have the credibility crisis. You have to prove that you deserve to be left to maintain your authority because it's beneficial to the people. So I'm going to have to look into more closely this, what's been going on since the coups. I haven't exactly taken the time to do a deep dive on it. So kind of getting started now. Hope you guys appreciate it. And yes, Sean, isn't Morocco a supporter of is not real? Yes. So this is where I'm trying to say, as far as the Chinese cheerleaders, the cheerleaders of China, when they're in bed with the UAE and when they're in bed with Morocco, that means they're in bed with Israel. And when they claim to be Marxist-Leninist and they're in bed with Israel, where they support genocide, that's what I'm saying. They completely bankrupt their claim to whatever ideology. Like, you can go ahead and say that they're a powerful, whatever, respected nation that has their own sovereignty and all that, but you can't call them Marxist-Leninist, right? Like, being a communist, whatever, like what communism is about, it matters, right? It's not just like a bunch of words. It's not an excuse, whatever, to throw at the people to shut them up. Okay. So let me play this these videos about these pipelines here, and I think it will all be fairly clear that this pragmatism is kind of reached its limits. Okay, there's other ways to be pragmatic than supporting the people that are propped up by Israel and the US. Okay, you can do better. Sorry, you saying no audio on the video? Because if you can't hear it, I'll have to start it over again. Um, anyone there able to let me know if they could hear the video? Or yes, no audio on the video. Okay, let me see what happened here. It's weird. I see no reason why it shouldn't work. Let me refresh the page, see if that helps. How about now? If you can, I would appreciate it if you let me know. I'm not sure what to do about that. Let's see. Uh, hmm. Sorry, guys. Shared window button for audio. So did you click the shared window button for audio? What button is this precisely? Still no audio. Shared window. Shared window. Well, let me try. I have another one in the meantime. We'll see if this one works instead. And if both of these videos work or not working out, kind of be frustrating for me. All right, can you hear this other video? You know what? Maybe it's because these videos says I'm not signed in for some reason. Well, this one says I am signed in. I don't know. No audio on this video also. God damn it. Well, this one's got the subtitles. I could kind of play and you can read it. That's kind of annoying. But what I'm trying to show you is that there are some competing pipeline projects here. There's a really expensive $25 billion pipeline project that goes around the coast of Africa. And then there's the one that goes through the AES in Algeria, which would be still 13 billion, but much more direct, much cheaper, much more common sense. But the only reason why it has not been built yet is because of all that terrorist activity, that suspicious terrorist activity. So let me see if I can't figure out these audio issues. I apologize. Just bear with me here. I'll see what I can do. And if not, then I'll just go back to reading something. So just give me a second.
Exploitative inclinations. Europe looks to Africa, which has vast natural gas reserves that might sustain several nations for years. In order to secure natural gas, this forces Europe to approach Africa and take a more egalitarian stance. However, how can the energy crisis be resolved by a gas pipeline project? What benefits does it offer? It's pretty obvious why Africa is difficult to understand why Europe has maintained an interest in Africa, even though European nations like France take advantage of it. They're an area where Europe is open to change, natural gas. It's interesting to note that European nations rely significantly on energy imports, and historically, Russia provided them with oil and natural gas. However, Europe's energy security has been jeopardized with the construction of Nord Stream 1 and 2. Therefore, in an attempt to abandon its exploitative inclinations, Europe looks to Africa, which has vast natural gas reserves that might sustain several nations for years. In order to secure natural gas, This forces Europe to approach Africa and take a more egalitarian stance. However, how can Europe's energy crisis be resolved by a gas pipeline project? What benefits does it offer Africa that make it the center of attention? It's pretty obvious why Africa is essential to Europe's energy supply. Large deposits of oil, natural gas, and other resources are found throughout Africa. But
All right, these videos can be a little bit, they speak a little bit slowly. So let me speed this up a little bit. Hopefully it's not too fast for you. But there's some kind of propagandistic quality to this type of video. Try and watch it to hopefully get the basic facts, but I find that they tend to make a lot of boilerplate statements that if you kind of analyze the statements, they're just sort of broad and vague and don't really point to much detail to go off of.
Largest natural gas reserves. Nigeria barely supplies 14% of the European Union's ship-delivered LNG imports, despite this distinction. This suggests...
Another thing I would mention, something that we tend to forget is what's good for like Western African states is not necessarily good for Iran as well as the other Gulf states, but what might complicate like a unity as far as anti-imperialism is concerned would be if Iran's interests are kind of jeopardized by Western Saharan states' infrastructure improvements. Because if the north-south trade increases and the east-west trade is not quite as relevant, sort of thing. So they could be direct competitors for the European market is what I'm saying. So that just might kind of complicate things as far as their resistance against America. Back to the video.
The possibility of higher revenue generation and more gas exports. The 27-member EU is aggressively looking for alternate sources of natural gas as Europe struggles with decreased supplies from Moscow, which is driving agreements with the EU and Israel to increase LNG supplies, while Italy just concluded a $4 billion gas deal with Algeria. Angola and Italy also inked a gas agreement. Despite international pressure to move away from fossil fuels, African leaders, such as President Ouattara of Ivory Coast, are excited for their nations to gain from such initiatives. Acknowledging that millions of Africans lack access to electricity, they all...
So that's what I find that they constantly use as bait there. They want to help these nations to develop their infrastructure, and they want to promise that a lot of those resources are going to stay domestically and benefit the people in the country. But what often happens is that the promise fails to deliver. So these pipeline projects have been proposed for decades. They've never been able to get them off the ground. So promises, you know.
But today, more than ever, Europe is keen to purchase natural gas from Africa. Europeans compete naturally in a way that's...
I don't know if the video was lagging for you guys a little bit, but it showed a kind of an important graph that I think the visualizations help as far as what's going on, right? So let's see what's happening.
Specifics of the Niger Trans-African Pipeline, also referred to as the Trans-Saharan Gas Pipeline. By linking Nigeria, Niger, and Algeria, this proposed natural gas...
So that's you want to just kind of freeze.
Gas pipeline. By linking Nigeria...
You want to just kind of get that image in your mind, then that helps us understand there's a pipeline project that's proposed to go all the way to connect to the already existing pipelines there, and that is the project, like path of least resistance, right? You don't want to spend more money or do more harm to the environment than you have to. And so this is the project that should be accepted, except for geopolitical, whatever, ideological concerns. So let's move on and get to the other one. You'll see the other pipeline and all the complications that go with that. So
Nigeria, Niger, and Algeria.
Also, by the way, look at this map, okay? This is unacceptable. Both this and the other video has already decided in modern maps to take away Western Saharan sovereignty and behave as if Morocco has legitimate claim to this entire territory. And the issue has yet to be decided, you know, properly. And then so this is what capitalists do, wherever they just move forward and come up with a false version of the truth, and then they put that out in the propaganda in the media, and then you know they fake it till they make it, right?
Proposed natural gas pipeline would give the EU access to a variety of gas supply sources. Remarkably, the original plan for this pipeline project dates back to the 1970s, and Europe had its sights set on it as early as 50 years ago. To begin project preparations, the Algerian National Oil and Gas Company Sonatrach and the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation signed a Memorandum of Understanding on January 14, 2002. Penspen Limited was hired by the NNPC and Sonatrach in June 2005 to carry out a feasibility study, which was completed in September 2006, and verify the pipeline's operational, financial, and technical viability. On February 20, 2009, NNPC and Sonatrach decided to proceed with the development of a joint venture agreement and a memorandum of understanding including the three governments. On July 3, 2009, in Abuja, the energy ministers of Nigeria, Niger, and Algeria formally signed the intergovernmental agreement on the project. The Trans-Saharan Gas Pipeline project took a step forward on July 28, 2022, when the energy ministers of Algeria, Niger, and Nigeria signed a memorandum of agreement to turn it from a planned concept to a workable project. The third tripartite ministerial meeting in Algiers ended successfully with this agreement, which was co-signed by Nigerian Minister of Energy and Renewable Energy Mohamed Sani Mahamadou, Nigerian Minister of State for Petroleum Resources Timothy Silva, and Algerian Minister of Energy and Mines Mohamed Arkab. Let's now examine the pipeline's course in more detail. The pipeline is expected to start in Nigeria's Warri region and go north through the country until it reaches Hassi R'Mel in Algeria. It will link to existing pipelines in Hassi R'Mel, including the Megaz, Galsi, Maghreb Europe, and Trans-Mediterranean pipelines. From the gas transmission hubs at El Kala and Beni Saf on Algeria's Mediterranean coast, these pipelines deliver gas to Europe. The pipeline is expected to be 4,128 kilometers long, with 2,310 kilometers in Algeria, 841 kilometers in Niger, and 137 kilometers.
Good question, Sean. I'm not sure. I haven't actually done the research on the question, but I believe that this is the pipeline that they would prefer to see built, because the other proposed pipeline appears to be more the Morocco-aligned project, and this is the Algeria-aligned project. And the tricky thing is, seems like China would benefit either way. So I don't think they really care which pipeline gets built, except as long as they kind of get their cut. But like the U.S., part of their deal that they want to normalize the cooperation with Mali, with the Sahel states, is to stop using Russian mercenaries and whatnot. So the U.S.'s condition is that Russia's influence has to wane in order for American influence to wax here. And so I think that this would be the pipeline that Russians want, and the Morocco, Nigeria, the Africa Atlantic pipeline, I think it's called, would be the one that they would oppose. And I think there's only enough energy demand in Europe for one or the other. And so this is a zero-sum game.
In Nigeria, with diameters ranging from 48 to 56 inches, its capacity is anticipated to support up to 30 billion cubic meters of natural gas per year.
With Lucid, engineering
Fuck off
team.
ads. Fuck off ads. You know, it'd be nice if I block the ad, if it actually blocked it, because I'm pretty sure I'll see that one again eventually.
And it was originally planned to be operational by 2015. Regarding ownership, the pipeline will be built and operated by a partnership made up of the Republic of Niger, Sonatrach, and the NNPC. At first, Sonatrach and the NNPC will jointly own 90% of the company, with Niger keeping the remaining 10%. Nigeria and the Russian energy behemoth Gazprom have been in talks about possible participation in the project.
So that part's probably worth going over again, because if Nigeria is the transit country, Niger is the transit country, and pipeline can't be built without it. The NNPC will jointly own, or Sonatrach and the NNPC. These are the state-owned oil companies in Algeria and Nigeria. So as far as nationalization is the socialist thing to do, we're definitely going to benefit the people. Not sure if it really. So let's just observe here.
Made up of the Republic of Niger, Sonatrach, and the NNPC. At first, operated by a partnership made up of the Republic of Niger, Sonatrach, and the NNPC. At first, Sonatrach and the NNPC will jointly own 90% of the company, with Niger keeping the remaining 10%. Nigeria and the Russian energy behemoth Gazprom have been in talks about possible participation in the project. Royal Dutch Shell, France's Total SA, Italy's Eni SPI, and India's GAIL are among the other interested parties. Partners need to provide.
So that's kind of interesting as far as Russia's Gazprom might be interested, but who are the other tenders for the contract? That's all these capitalists. That's their multipolarity is just a bunch of capitalism, I guess. What are you saying? Royal Dutch Shell, France's Total SA, Italy's
Eni
SPI, and India's GAIL. So that doesn't exactly seem like African companies developing their own resources and benefiting from it. That sounds like compradors selling the resources to, the classic story of need these foreign companies to come and do the work so that we don't actually develop the skills and they get a bigger piece of the pie than they should because we can't do it without them. I don't know.
And India's GAIL are among the other interested parties. Partners need to provide more than simply financial help, the Algerian energy minister stressed. The energy ministers of Nigeria and Algeria have both stated that they are amenable to outside cooperation, but they emphasize the significance of significant advantages. Let's now examine the possible advantages for the participating African nations. First and foremost, it's critical to remember that the pipeline is presently being built and could take several years to finish. Africa may gain from this since it gives time to think through the terms of the pipeline and guarantee that African nations receive more advantages. Countries in Africa now have the chance to put their own interests ahead of those of Europe as the continent's dynamics change. Up to 30 billion cubic meters of gas per year might be transported from Nigeria via the $13 billion pipeline once it is up and running. The pipeline would then proceed north through Niger and Algeria. The TSGP gas will then either be loaded onto liquefied natural gas carriers for export or transferred to Europe via the Trans-Mediterranean pipeline, which runs beneath the ocean.
That's another picture that helps really grasp the importance of this. And the sad thing here about this project not really including Libya, I feel like there could have been a connection here with this green pipeline here to this Wafa, city of Wafa. That red line seems to have gone all the way away from it when it could have had a branch to include them. But I don't know. Maybe that wouldn't have been feasible. Anyway.
The three African nations would receive billions of dollars in revenue as a result. To put it in context, Africa might make an average of $147 billion a year if Europe is able to replace Russian gas through the Trans-Saharan gas pipeline. This sum is equivalent to what the EU paid Russia for its energy imports in 2021. It's crucial to remember that we are only looking at one pipeline with sellers in 3 African nations. Due to strong demand, natural gas reserves from other African nations that join the pipeline are anticipated to be absorbed by European markets. Energy analysts are still pessimistic about African gas entering Europe anytime soon, though. According to others, the pipeline might not be built in the upcoming 10 years. According to Isaac Body, a Nigerian public finance expert from Abuja, the project's biggest obstacle may be the absence of political will. However,
maybe the absence of political will. I'm pretty sure that they would build this, sabotage the project is far too strong. And that's that white supremacy colonialism or whatever. They don't want to see them. They want to pretend like they want to help them develop these projects. But ultimately, I think someone like France, it actually benefits them not to have this project developed, because it gives the economic clout, whatever, to Africa, to the Sahel states, to be able to actually have economic sovereignty. If they can get the deal that Russia had, then that would be a game changer. And that's kind of as much as they need the resources, they don't need Africa rising. So Europe needs Africa to rise as long as it maintains its class position below Europe, whatever. It can never become equals, right? That's the problem with Europe and the US, where none of this needs to happen. Where, like, all of this, your energy needs, your security needs, whatever, those could all be addressed properly if you actually came to the table with genuine integrity and wanted to have a genuine win-win situation. But that's not what it's ever about. It's always about offering a win-win situation, making sure that you come out ahead of the person you made the deal with, or whatever, so that they end up getting a bad deal. It's the only way the Americans and the Europeans know how to do business.
historically, whenever the governments of the member nations changed, the pipeline regained speed. In 2022, representatives from Algeria, Niger, and Nigeria convened in Niamey, Niger, to rekindle interest in the Trans-Saharan gas pipeline. The three countries' energy ministers then agreed to create a task force for the project in July and signed a memorandum of understanding to update an existing feasibility study. Algeria, Niger, and Nigeria have resurrected a multi-billion.
So Jack's asking, where are they getting this natural gas from? Isn't this just another case of Western powers helping themselves to the resources of another country and paying nothing or very little back? That is the question. It seems like the Sahel states are claiming that this time around that they're going to get more than nothing or very little, that they're actually going to get an equitable deal. That's what they're demanding. We'll see what happens. You know, I think that I'm saying, like, be careful negotiating with the U.S. If they can, they will stab you in the back, and they know that, I'm sure. They don't really need to hear from me, the white devil in Canada. But where are they getting the natural gas from? I guess Nigeria has a huge amount of natural gas as well as oil. So if you're wondering why the Christian genocide in Nigeria is all of a sudden super relevant, stay tuned or whatever. Big things happening this year.
Gas project that has been dormant for decades as part of Europe's efforts to lessen its need on Russian natural gas. Nigeria's Petroleum Minister Timothy Silva revealed that European companies and countries will provide the project's cash, and talks are already under progress. The three African countries formed a joint committee to research the viability of building a 4,128-kilometer gas pipeline that would connect southern Nigeria, Niger, and Algeria. The African Energy Chamber, a group that promotes collaboration in the continent's energy industry, has praised the project's resuscitation. The Trans-Saharan Gas Project pipeline was conceived with the intention of enhancing natural gas transportation in Africa. Several African governments are taking steps to guarantee the smooth distribution of these resources throughout the continent, which will promote regional economic growth, given Africa's substantial contribution to the production of crude oil, liquefied natural gas, and other petroleum products. Notably, both regional and international oil and gas businesses are showing an increasing interest in investing in Africa's oil and gas endeavors, including BP, Total from France, Eni from Italy, and Baker Hughes. The TSGP's operationalization gives the African nations involved in the initiative a great deal of influence. These countries can strategically use the pipeline as a negotiating weapon to set gas prices and negotiate trade deals because they supply gas to Europe. African nations may be able to establish themselves in the global energy market with this newfound leverage, leading to improved economic outcomes through advantageous trade conditions. In contrast to the conventional story of European control over Africa, the reversal of power dynamics enables African states to articulate their interests and bargain more fairly. Now, European leaders are traveling to Africa because they want Africa's gas and are willing to negotiate as often as Africa wants. The idea that European leaders are taking the initiative while African leaders are being called upon is called into question because Africa has the negotiating power in this situation. For many years, Europe's major priority when interacting with Africa has been energy. It has, nevertheless, recently taken center stage. European leaders who are keen to identify alternatives to Russian natural gas are often seen congregating in African capital.
So here's an interesting line of inquiry. What is it to Russia's benefit to help see this pipeline developed if that removes Europe's dependency on Russian gas? Except maybe if they are making a calculation that the days of Russian supplying Europe with gas is over for the foreseeable future. So maybe that's the case considering the situation in Ukraine, but it seems to me like it's not really in Russia's interest to help the Sahel states secure these contracts in an equitable manner, because that would relieve their dependence on Russian aid, military assistance, whatever. Trade, I guess. Is it trade or is it aid, you know? But it's very complicated, so we should try not to jump to conclusions, right? We should maybe observe, and when we can reliably come to a conclusion without jumping to it, then it should be fair for us to do so. I think in the next year, things have to come to a head in such a way that we are going to see the difference between rhetoric and action, and what people really stand for. It's going to be impossible to hide sooner rather than later, I would say.
Despite the need to switch to renewable energy, this greater participation has given African peers hope that the conflict in Ukraine will alter the mix of the continent's connection with Europe and possibly attract a new wave of gas investments. In order to seek gas accords, the president of Poland traveled to Senegal in September. Schultz also sought agreements in this field in May. In order to Europe's energy issue while up to
So I'm kind of betting that this is an AI voice narrator, because that's Olaf Schultz. And what did he say? Sounded like he said Oliver almost. Because the AI has a hard time pronouncing things properly. But people don't necessarily know how to pronounce names either. So
agreements in this field in May. In order to solve Europe's energy issue in order to seek gas accords, the president of Poland traveled to Senegal in September, while German Chancellor Olaf Scholz also sought agreements in this field in May. In order to solve Europe's energy issue while upholding pledges to cut greenhouse gas emissions, Scholz recently underlined.
So I think it gives away how propagandistic this video is, that they're really willing to say, well, if they had a face with a straight face, that developing this energy pipeline, this CO2 releasing energy, that's good for the environment. It's amazing how much the climate narrative change stuff is just like, pragmatism killed the fuck out of that. That's what I'm saying. That's too much of an idealistic thing to care about the environment that we all depend on, I guess. There's no realism happening with the climate people, right? They're all just a bunch of lunatics. It's like, well, you guys who are celebrating this like technocratic mega projects, whatever is the way to bring power to a nation, whatever, that's how you take a shit on the environment. And then 50 years from now, when you can't fix it anymore, everyone's going to hate you for that. But you'll be able to justify whatever, that it was a necessary transaction that was very pragmatic and very, very important for the nation, for the liberation of the nation. You have to destroy its ecology. Doesn't work for me. So sorry, I keep pausing here, but let's get
the significance of working with nations where new gas reserves have the potential to be developed. African capitalists are hopeful the demand from Europe would result in the funding of gas infrastructure for both domestic and export use. In any case, Europe needs to finance the pipeline and make sure all obstacles are removed, because it is essential for the continent, whose nations are always in dire need of energy. Because African nations would have the authority to choose gas pricing and negotiate all arrangements, Africa will be able to benefit from the pipeline permanently. Even more regional collaboration and integration among African countries can be fostered by the TSGP. Coordination between nations would be necessary for cooperation on such a significant infrastructure project, which might result in closer alliances and diplomatic connections throughout Africa. By working together, African nations would be able to advance together. In addition to supporting pipeline operations, the pipeline's construction would spur the growth of related infrastructure, including roads, railroads, and telecommunications networks, which would facilitate the transportation of natural gas and promote regional connection and development. The TSGP might help African nations reduce their environmental effects, switch to greener energy sources, and support international efforts to tackle climate change.
I can't believe it's so ridiculous. Wherever, don't buy that, people. Don't let them tell you that they're gonna improve the environment, their carbon footprint by building $13 billion pipelines that span continents. It's not good. It's not good. It's not good. So let me read a little bit of an article here and in between the videos, so that we're not just sitting here watching so much. I think it will be somewhat revealing to read from the Times of Israel. Let's see what the Israelis think about this development. That might be a little bit illuminating, as long as we are capable of having the critical thinking, do a critical reading of their article. Because if you don't know that Israel is an abomination, most evil abomination of all time, you haven't really been paying attention. You've been living under a rock. So this was from February 18th, 2026. The Sahel thaw is what they're calling it, is a thaw, a climate change thaw in the desert. Algeria's pipeline gambit to sideline Morocco and defy the US. The high-stakes diplomacy unfolding in Algiers this week marks a decisive pivot in the battle for Africa's energy future. General Abdourahmane Tiani, the leader of Niger's military government, met with Algerian President Abdelmajid Tebboune to formalize a reconciliation that many in Washington failed to anticipate. After a bitter 10-month rift characterized by recalled ambassadors and border tensions following a drone incident in early 2025, the two nations have not only restored ties, but have also committed to the immediate relaunch of the Trans-Saharan gas pipeline. This Sahel thaw is far more than a bilateral neighborly reset. It is a calculated strategic counter-pivot designed to preserve Algeria's status as Europe's indispensable energy gatekeeper, while directly undermining the burgeoning Atlantic energy corridor championed by the United States and its key regional ally, Morocco. So as we see, Morocco and Algeria are fighting over who gets to hold the status of the indispensable gatekeeper. For the leadership in Algiers, this sudden diplomatic détente is born of necessity rather than genuine brotherhood. Although this is the Israelis telling you that their actions are not about brotherhood or whatever. Their actions are just about, transactional pragmatism, right? Where don't fucking listen to the Israelis. They want to divide and conquer you. That is literally all they think about. So Algeria has watched with growing alarm as the Nigeria-Morocco gas pipeline, a massive project backed by the US and spanning 13 West African nations, moved from a visionary concept toward a tangible reality, with final investment decisions looming. The Moroccan-led initiative offers a stable, Atlantic-facing route that bypasses the volatile Sahel entirely, promising to integrate West Africa's economies and provide Europe with a reliable alternative to Algerian and Russian gas. The one wrinkle in claiming that the Moroccan initiative offers a stable route would be the Polisario front, because they could challenge the stability of that coastline that pipeline needs to pass through. So the only way to make sure that that is a stable route is to complete a genocide, or for them to surrender their claims, their intentions for self-determination. If they completely give up like they expect the Gazans to do, then they get what they want. But I somehow don't think that they're, after 50 years, just going to give up. I'm pretty sure there's another genocide around the corner that we all need to be doing everything we can to make sure it does not happen. because the isolation of the Polisario front, wherever, in the name of transporting resources to Europe is another egregious failure to do anything right by the international community, right? You can't, in 2026 or whatever, make decisions that validate the crime of genocide, right? Or with the whole thing about nuclear weapons and everything, we will ensure that we eradicate ourselves by not establishing rational standards to operate with. But I'm just that white devil who says whatever. Don't trust the AES. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying don't trust the U.S. Don't trust the Israel or whatever. And if you're going to trust them, then don't trust people trusting them. So promising to integrate West Africa's economies and provide Europe with a reliable alternative to Algerian and Russian gas. It's not Russian, it's Nigerian gas, but okay. Faced with the prospect of becoming a geopolitical relic, Algiers has been forced to mend its southern fences. By bringing Niger back into the fold, Algeria is attempting to lock down the inland Nigerian gas route before the Moroccan alternative makes the Trans-Saharan project obsolete. So it's going to be a race against whatever time, whoever finishes the pipelines first wins, apparently. And so they have this massive incentive to commit the terrorist acts that make sure that the projects cannot be built. So let's pay attention to who's funding this terrorists in the Western Sahara. Like in the next year, it will all be clear if we can obtain the evidence, right? The timing of this relaunch, with construction scheduled to begin immediately after the holy month of Ramadan, reveals the urgency of the Algerian gambit. Trans-Saharan gas pipeline we've already talked about how long it is in the video, designed to funnel 30 billion. We talked about how much it's supposed to funnel annually from Nigeria's Delta region through the heart of Niger and into Algeria's established Mediterranean terminals. From a purely technical standpoint, the Algerian route is shorter and significantly cheaper. From a purely logical standpoint, the Algerian route is a no-brainer, the only way to go, with an estimated cost of $13 billion compared to the $25 billion price tag of the Moroccan Atlantic route. However, if you want to be an idiot, go with the really more than twice as expensive route that destroys the ecosystems, the marine ecosystems along the coast, wherever. There is no building that pipeline around Africa, whatever, without completely destroying the fishing environment that all those people on the coast depend on, whatever. So what would you rather have? A vibrant fishing industry or a vibrant oil and gas industry? I know which one I would rather have, but I must be some kind of crazy, whatever, lunatic, right? However, its path through the AES territory is controlled by, has long been its Achilles heel. By reconciling with Tiani, Tebboune is betting that he can stabilize this corridor through economic patronage, effectively offering Niger a stake in the transit revenues that the country's struggling economy desperately needs. This development poses a direct challenge to American strategic interests. So the pipeline that the AES states are seeking to ensure that they get built is a direct challenge to American strategic interests in the Mediterranean and across the Maghreb. However, they're going to come in and they're going to help you with the fight against terrorists better than the French did. I don't even think anything else more needs to be said. I think you guys are not stupid, right? Okay, Extra Bulla, thanks for hanging out. Gotta make like a tree and leaf. Much love, peace, peace, peace. Thank you for hanging out and have a good night. So let's see how much, not sure if we need to rereading this entire fucking Israeli article. So let's see to move on here. The development poses a direct challenge to American strategic interests in the Mediterranean. For years, U.S. energy policy has leaned toward diversifying European supply chains. So is that Nord Stream 2 bomber, Joe Biden, wherever? Is that U.S. energy policy diversifying European supply chains, or is that the opposite of diversification, ensuring that Russia's not part of that diversification? Okay, because none of that shit needed to happen with Ukraine, right? It was all the U.S. energy policy forcing these genocides to happen, right? Diversifying European supply chains away from actors that utilize energy as a tool of political leverage. Are you fucking kidding me? The U.S. Like we all know, like the U.S. just like accuse others of that which you are guilty, obviously, right? Morocco, a major non-NATO ally and a signatory of the Abraham Accords, represents the gold standard of this American-led vision, a stable pro-Western transit hub that links the Gulf of Guinea to the European Union. So yes, Morocco represents the neo-colonial scramble for Africa, whatever, denial of African sovereignty. That's what Morocco is. Conversely, the Nigeria axis increasingly aligns with a Russian-leaning security architecture. The AES has already largely expelled Western military presence in favor of Russian security contractors and Chinese infrastructure investments. If Algeria succeeds in operationalizing the Trans-Saharan pipeline, it will solidify an energy corridor dominated by a bloc that is at best indifferent and at worst hostile to U.S. regional objectives. So I think as much as that's from the Israelis, sometimes their fear reveals some truths. So I think that their statements there designed to influence the Americans to reject the whatever deal, whatever the AES is trying to objectives they're trying to accomplish, whatever, those are diametrically opposed to Israel's interests because they support Morocco. So not sure, maybe I should read this one next, or okay, I'll get to this one after this part, because this was another thing, development that I'm making a connection here. Maybe it's speculation, but I find it very strange that the AES hosts the American delegation to say that they're ready for win-win terrorism cooperation and trade deals instead of aid. And lo and behold, they turn around and say that France is the state sponsor of terror, but not the Americans. So, and the U.S. has been having tensions with U.S.-France tensions escalate, right? So I find it curious. I find it very curious that they're being selective as far as who is and who is not a state sponsor of terror. The U.S. is the worst state sponsor of terror in the world, has been for a long time, got the worst track record for it. Unless you want to say that Israel, whatever, is really behind it. But U.S. is behind Israel, right? The creation of ISIS and everything. So this is from peoplesdispatch.org. France is the state sponsor of terror, AES countries declare. So apparently the AES is like literally declaring war on France, although it seems kind of symbolic because the French have just declared that this declaration is just like media warfare, whatever, psychological narrative. Nostalgic for the colonial era and concerned by the loss of influence in Sahel, France is intent on destabilizing the AES by providing intelligence, logistical support, arms, and ammunition to the terrorist groups Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger allege. This is from October 6, 2025. Terrorism is being used by imperialist forces to pillage African resources, said Burkina Faso's Prime Minister Rimtalba Ouedraogo, in his address at the 80th UN General Assembly. A case in point is France, whose troops Burkina Faso expelled in early 2023. Mali, which had also expelled French troops the year before, had sought a meeting of the UN Security Council in 2022 so that my country could provide irrefutable proof of France's support for terrorist activities, recalled as Prime Minister Abdullah Maiga in his address. So far, this request has not been followed up on, while France continues its sabotage. Lamine Mahaman, the Prime Minister of Niger, also pointed out that since the expulsion of French troops in 2023, the government of France has established a subversive, underhanded plan to destabilize my country by training, financing, and equipping terrorists. Spawning terrorist groups across the Sahel by destroying Libya with its NATO allies in 2011, France militarized the region by deploying thousands of troops ostensibly to combat the threat of terror attacks, which only grew alongside its military deployment. But this was a little too old, this one. I have a couple other maybe more recent ones that are more clearly stating we are going to war. So here is a French one. On va entrer en guerre avec la France. Au Niger, un cadre militaire dit se préparer à un conflit armé avec Paris. But the English one, so you guys can understand. We are going to war. Niger Junta General rallies youth against France. General Tiani's right-hand man urges citizens to mobilize against the former colonial power, accusing Paris of plotting an invasion to seize uranium assets, a claim the French military has dismissed as information warfare. So if you're going against the colonial power for being colonial, then you have to support the Polisario front, right? You shouldn't isolate the enemy of my enemy is my friend, right? General Amadou Ibro, this is from February 13th, 2026. The private chief of staff to junta leader General Abdourahmane Tiani claimed on Wednesday, the 11th of February, that France was preparing to wage war on Niger. Speaking at a youth rally in a stadium in Niamey, he justified his remarks by arguing that his country was the cause of the bad economic situation currently afflicting France. This mobilization is done. It is decreed so that we prepare for war with France, he declared in French. Know this, we are going to enter into war with France. We were not at war, but it is now that we are going to war with France, he added, to applause from a crowd chanting, down with France. And France denies these accusations. There is no question of a French intervention in Niger. Interesting statement, the way that they say it, they're acting like there is no French intervention in Niger, but when you say there is no question of it, that's like there's like a double speak happening there to me. It sounds like you could also be saying that there is no question that there will inevitably have to be a French intervention in Niger, retorted the spokesperson for the French Defense Staff, Colonel Guillaume Vernet, describing the claims as manifestly information warfare on the part of Niger. The video of the speech was widely shared, blah, blah, blah. So that's that happening, right? So that's where I'm going to get to this article for the sake of time, to try and, because I'm pointing the finger a little bit at the AES as maybe making a mistake here, but they might be in a catch-22 at the same time. They might have been potentially outmaneuvered by these fucking psychopathic imperialists. I really hope not. Because how are they supposed to develop this pipeline project with Algeria and declare war on France if Algeria is restoring security cooperation with France? So I know you don't maybe like the conversation that I've started here about like being critical and distrustful about the anti-imperialist coup governments, but I think these hard questions need to be asked, and if I'm wrong to ask them, so be it, whatever. But hopefully, I can spur some other people to do research, like better research than I can do, that will get clearer understanding of this situation. So this is very recent, from 2 days ago, from Maghrebi.org. France and Algeria agreed to restore security cooperation. France and Algeria agreed to restart high-level security cooperation, signaling a potential easing of diplomatic tensions between the two countries that started in 2024, as reported by Maghrebi Week on February 23rd. The breakthrough came during a visit to Algiers by French Interior Minister Laurent Nunez on February 17th, who met Algerian President Abdelmajid Tebboune. The renewed partnership will focus on judicial coordination, policing, and intelligence sharing, with cooperation expected to resume as quickly as possible, according to the French minister. So that's that. That's just a very short little... They've announced to agree to restore it, right? So kind of to be continued, right? This is the other article I was going to read. from October 11th, 2025, Algeria to spend billions preparing for war. The Algerian government has approved a record $25 billion defense budget for 2026, the largest in the country's history, amid growing security concerns across the Sahel region, the Clash report said. So I'm not sure if this is. I would imagine that I would speculate that the Algerian government is seeking to establish its own kind of sovereignty here. If one thing a country really needs to have genuine sovereignty is a strong military. That seems to be a pretty uncontroversial thing. And if they don't want to be dictated by France, then maybe they need a strong, or Morocco, right? Or the US, maybe they need a strong enough military that they're not really willing to risk fucking with them. On the other hand, if they're going to build up a really strong military and then do the Europe's bidding, then they could be looking to dominate the Sahel states to the south of them by making it kind of impossible for them to attack Algeria if need be, because their military has been so much better equipped or whatever. So the Algerian government has approved a record $25 billion defense budget for 2026, the largest in the country's history, amid growing security concerns across the Sahel region. So this is the guns versus butter problem. As much as you need to have that security, you also need to invest in your economy and your people or whatever beyond just fucking weapons. According to the report, the 2026 finance bill totals $135 billion, up from $128 billion in 2025 and $113 billion in 2024. Military spending now accounts for 20.6% of the national budget, surpassing even the Ministry of Finance, which will receive 20.3%. The new allocation continues a trend that began in 2022, when Algeria sharply increased defense funding despite economic pressures from the COVID-19 pandemic, fluctuating oil revenues. Between 2020 and 2022, the country's defense spending averaged between $8 billion and $11 billion per year. That figure rose to over $18 billion in 2023, 22 billion in 2024, and 24 billion in 2025. That's a lot of 20s. I'm just saying, if you're going to build up a massive military and Morocco is going to try and eradicate the Polisario front, maybe it's time for a renewed border conflict with them. Algeria's 2026 budget expansion comes at a time of falling hydrocarbon prices, currently ranging between $65 and $67 per barrel, and a projected $40 billion budget deficit. The growing defense allocation has prompted debate in Algiers over how long such spending can be sustained without broader fiscal adjustments. Defense analysts note that Algeria's armed forces have become the largest recipient of public funding, overtaking civilian ministries by a wide margin. The latest figures mean 1 in every 5 dinars of public expenditure will go to the military, reaffirming the armed forces' central position in national policy. The increased spending occurs despite an absence of new large-scale security threats. Long-standing regional tensions. Well, this I feel like is maybe a disingenuous statement, because the U.S. and France, Morocco, what they did to Libya demonstrates that they are large-scale security threats. And the way that those nations finance terrorist activity, whatever, they create security threats if there are none to begin with, right? Long-standing regional tensions with Morocco and instability in the Sahel, particularly in Mali and Niger, remain key reference points for Algeria's defense planning. However, observers point out that the overall security environment has not deteriorated significantly in recent years. It's kind of the calm before the storm, I'm guessing. They're all kind of saving their powder and building up their stocks, their ammunition stocks and everything, and securing deals. Recent unconfirmed reports suggest that Algeria has become the first foreign customer for Russia's Su-57 and Su-34 combat aircraft, which have allegedly been spotted during test flights ahead of delivery. Algeria's renewed emphasis on defense capability underscores its intent to maintain regional influence and readiness amid shifting dynamics in North and West Africa. Okay. Sorry, guys, if I'm doing a lot of reading. Hope you guys are. I need that one banner on the bottom for. Hope you guys are appreciating the content. I know it's a lot to get into, but it is very significant developments I think that we should be paying attention to. So let me see what else there is. Oh, right. And then there is this other Israel article, Tehran Polisario, a hidden menace. So they're pointing the finger. This is from June 22nd, 2025. It's an interesting thing to note. Not sure if there's any credibility to the accusation, but they are claiming that this Polisario front is being propped up by the Iranian regime, by the Revolutionary Guard, not the regime. From Tehran to Tindouf, the hidden alliance threatening North Africa. In a development that lays bare the deepening ties between the Polisario front and the Iranian regime, a young separatist figure revealed this week that he had met with the Iranian ambassador in Spain. They don't really provide much details, whatever proof. They just kind of make some claims, typical Israeli shit. But maybe if you go looking us up, you could find out what they're talking about. During the meeting, the Polisario representative expressed full solidarity with Iran in its confrontation with Israel, emphasizing what he described as shared struggles against hegemonic powers. Well, yeah, because it's okay for Israel to prop up whatever, support Morocco, but it's not okay for their adversaries to get assistance from whatever their allies. Double standards of colonizers is ridiculous, right? In return, the Iranian ambassador reaffirmed his country's support for the Polisario front and encouraged the group's calls for secession from Moroccan sovereignty. So, if you support Iran, if you support the Houthis, then you should be supporting the Polisario front, not making pragmatic whatever dismissals of sovereignty. This publicly disclosed meeting serves as yet another indication that the relationship between the Polisario and Tehran is no longer speculation. It is an evolving reality that threatens to transform the conflict in the Moroccan Sahara into a new front in global geopolitical tensions. Amid rising instability across North Africa and the Sahel, new evidence continues to emerge, revealing a shadowy and dangerous alliance between the separatist Polisario front and the Iranian regime. This unholy alliance appears to be an undeclared effort to export chaos, erode regional stability, and weaken Morocco's sovereignty. Unholy alliance, fuck you, whatever, okay? The national liberation struggle of people's right to self-determination and the overthrowing of the unholy colonizers, whatever. There's nothing unholy about that, whatever. They're completely holy, whatever, alliance. It's always the inversion, right? Make that which is good appear to be evil, or whatever. Like the classic fucking Goebbels shit, right? For years, Iran has faced accusations of supporting the Polisario not just politically or diplomatically, but also military and logistically through Lebanese Hezbollah. Although Tehran has repeatedly denied these allegations, numerous intelligence and media reports have shed light on the training of Polisario militants in guerrilla warfare and explosives, raising deep security concerns across the region. In 2018, Morocco severed diplomatic relations with Iran, citing concrete evidence that the Iranian embassy in Algeria was facilitating the delivery of weapons and the training of Polisario fighters via Hezbollah operatives. This also implicates the Algerian regime in a wider regional strategy of destabilization. Iran's ultimate goal appears to be exporting regional tension deeper into Africa and securing influence along the Atlantic coast. Okay, Israel's ultimate goal appears to be exporting regional tension into Africa. That is what they have been caught red-handed doing, and they always will turn around and cry loudly and point the fingers at people who are not doing what they are doing. So that's enough of that. That's kind of like, establishes the point. So this is the other thing, right? It is therefore the moral and legal responsibility of the United Nations, the European Union, the African Union, and all nations committed to fighting terrorism to act without delay and officially designate the Polisario Front as a terrorist organization, just as other groups have been labeled for engaging in similar violent and separatist tactics. Just like the fucking Zionist entity has been labeled for engaging in the similar tactics. That's right. Anyway. Let me see where to go. So here's this from the Hudson Institute. It's got to be some kind of CIA think tank. From April 18th, the strategic case for designating the Polisario Front as a foreign terrorist organization. But what's the problem here? I forgot for. Let me just. I wanted to quickly just jump over to the Wikipedia page just to show you this. This is what the Wikipedia page says, right? The United Nations considers the Polisario Front to be the legitimate representative of the Sahrawi people and maintains that the Sahrawis have a right to self-determination. Okay? And this is also an interesting thing, was that the Polisario is apparently a consultative member of the Socialist International, which I have not really any, never really heard anything about, so I'll have to research that, but it's a little bit curious. So my point is that the United Nations recognizes them to be a legitimate representative, not a fucking terrorist organization. So what is it that the Americans and the Moroccans are trying to now do is to get it so that they are designated their adversary. Instead of being a principled fight for self-determination, they need to label them the ugly terrorists, right? As if their playbook hasn't gotten old enough. The Western Sahara conflict, once a Cold War-era standoff between Morocco and a separatist insurgency. It's a fucking national liberation wherever anti-colonialist struggle. The last colony in Africa. All the other colonies were allowed to throw off their fucking colonial yoke, but not this one for whatever reason. Oh, what the fuck's going on? Sorry with this weird website. Oh, I forgot to switch back to my other tab. Sorry. Here. Yeah, sorry. Just wanted to see what you guys were writing there. So the Western Sahara conflict has reemerged as a volatile front in today's great power rivalry. No longer frozen, it now possesses a direct challenge to American security interests. So how the fuck, if it poses a direct challenge to American security interests, are we going to let the Americans make the fucking peace agreement? That's a complete conflict of interest. There's no way that they can be a neutral arbiter in a peace agreement. That's a negative peace if I've ever heard of one. Okay. At its center is the Polisario Front, the paramilitary organization formed in Algeria in 1973. Polisario presents itself as a movement for self-determination, but it functions as a destabilizing militia, smuggling arms, indoctrinating young Moroccans and Sahrawis, and allying itself with the strategic agendas of Iran, Russia, and China. Morocco is a major non-NATO ally of the... Morocco is the Ukraine of Africa, of the United States, and the linchpin of regional stability. In 2020, President Donald Trump broke from America's long-standing yet ineffective policy toward the region by officially recognizing Moroccan sovereignty over Western Sahara, a region Rabat has long administered. To move toward long-term stability in the region, the United States should take the next step and designate the Polisario Front as a foreign terrorist organization. So Israel says, make them terrorists. Hudson Institute says, make them terrorists, whatever. And then this one is an important article to get to. And then I'll play this video after a while, after talking so much. Because I told you I'd play the other video about the other pipeline. So now that I got the audio working again, hopefully that one's working too. But let me get this on. Thank you guys for bearing with me. I know I always throw a lot of information at you, but I feel like I'll just put it all out there in the video. If you get kind of tired or bored, you can pause it, you can come back to it, watch it when you're ready. I just kind of want to put it all out there for anyone who's willing to hear it all, as opposed to deciding that people's attention spans are so short that they don't deserve to hear everything. So Polisario, alarmed by Morocco's growing alliance with Sahel states amid fears of regional isolation. This is from May 5th, 2025. The growing political rapprochement between Morocco and the Sahel countries is causing evident unease within the Polisario Front. This concern is reflected in recent media reports published by the separatist group's affiliated outlets, particularly following the meeting in Rabat between King Mohammed VI and the foreign ministers of Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. These outlets have attempted to portray the Sahel countries' pivot toward Morocco and away from Algeria in building new alliances as a move that could compromise their sovereign decision-making in the future, arguing that it would increase Morocco's influence. That's what I'm saying. It doesn't really make much sense. Or the Sahel countries are apparently caught between a rock and a hard place between Morocco and Algeria, who are neither of them good options, which is why I think the Polisario front is their best option as far as access to the fucking coast. But it would be a bloody fucking conflict that would have to, like, unfortunately, whatever, we don't have many good choices right now. And you either are willing to fight or you kind of accept the consequences of not. So, however, many observers believe this narrative conceals deeper fears within the Polisario regarding the impact of this rapprochement on the separatist group's existential future. So, yes, it would be bad for the AES states to move into Morocco's influence, but of course it would be even worse for the Polisario's front, right? That doesn't invalidate the fact that it's not good for the AES to do that. Commenting on these developments, Mohamed Salem Abdel Fattah, a political analyst and expert on the Sahara issue, said, "The kingdom's adversaries are apprehensive about the Morocco-Sahel rapprochement as it paves the way for Sahel countries to fully assert their sovereignty over their territories." That's some goddamn gaslighting if I've ever heard it, okay? Trying to tell them that they get to fully assert their sovereignty by exacerbating Morocco's influence or whatever to the point where you eliminate the Polisario, the Western Sahara Polisario front entirely, whatever, and that would undermine the sovereignty of the Sahel states by improving Morocco's influence over them. So that would not assert their sovereignty, that would rob them of it. This would undermine the functional roles played by the Polisario Front and other armed militias used by Morocco's rivals to challenge the territorial integrity of Sahel countries, destabilize their sovereignty, and manipulate their sovereign decisions. So this is the difficult, complicated part that I don't really know, because information about this stuff is hard to get from North America or whatever. In a region like this or whatever, the information doesn't really, it's not really safe to be a journalist in these places, right? So what I'm saying is I'm a little bit unsure as to if the Polisario fronts, whatever, like got some activity in the Sahel countries that are destabilizing their sovereignty, whatever, as far as they have some need for a way to get arms and funding in and whatnot, then and if the coast is barred to them, they probably have to use the territory of the Sahel countries, whether they are allowed to or not. I'm not sure about all of that. I do see though that Israel's accusing them of being the ones creating the terrorism in the Sahel countries, when what they're just trying to do is the fucking national liberation thing over there. And everyone knows that Israel and the US or whatever are the ones that are paying terrorists all over the world. So decide what you want to believe. In a statement to Asahifa Arabic, Abdel Fattah added that the Polisario's functional roles are increasingly concentrated in the Sahel region due to its connections with various extremist groups and militias, particularly in terms of supplying arms, provisions, and medicine. So it is all about who is really behind these groups and why. He also pointed out that the Separatist Front is linked to organized crime groups operating in the Sahel, sponsoring illegal activities such as human trafficking, fuel smuggling, and arms trafficking. So who is this guy saying this, right? This is Mohamed Salem Abdel Fattah. I didn't really look into who that is. Let me just briefly see what comes up when I type that in, because he's saying some pretty propagandistic shit. Looks like maybe he works for the Egyptian government. Egyptian Board for Medical Specialties. But that's probably a different Mohamed Abdel Fattah. Sometimes these names don't seem like they're popular, but I don't know. It'd be nice if you could search for stuff wherever, if the search engines were more useful. Yeah, Morocco was promised it 3,000 years ago, exactly. Yeah. Thanks, Sean. I appreciate that, that you appreciate this. I was not expecting to find all this information when I went looking, and I was like, holy shit, I'll bet you people are going to want to hear this. So yeah, this Abdel Fattah guy, accusing them of human trafficking, fuel smuggling, and arms trafficking. But if you're fighting a liberation struggle, you need arms, you need fuel, and you need fighters. And people volunteering to go fight and bringing the fuel and the arms with them, the enemy could get away with accusing them of being human trafficked. That's all I'm going to say about that. So therefore, according to Abdel Fattah, the Sahel countries extending full control over their territories would undermine the Polisario's sources of funding, which rely primarily on illegal activities across the region. He further noted that extremist groups with ties to the Sahel have a significant presence in Tindouf, which I think are the refugee camps in Algeria, playing a key role in recruiting youth and sending them to conflict zones in the region. The Polisario also relies on these militias and extremist groups to maintain tribal balance within the Tindouf camps. Abdel Fattah stressed that the Sahel countries' engagement in the Atlantic Initiative would connect this strategic region with Morocco's southern provinces, thereby reinforcing de facto and practical recognition of Moroccan sovereignty over the Sahara. You can't make that decision on accident. Okay, by deciding, the Sahel countries, by deciding to engage with Morocco's initiatives, they are knowingly deciding that the principled struggle of the Polisario Front is not important to them, or is a acceptable compromise or sacrifice to be made. But what is that thing about first they came for them, and then they came for them, and then they came for me, and maybe I should have supported them. Oops, oh well. He added that this could support the withdrawal of recognition of the Polisario by states such as Mali. According to Abdel Fattah, this rapprochement is also likely to have other positive repercussions for Morocco, including clear and explicit steps in support of the kingdom regarding the Sahara issue, which would further strengthen Morocco's diplomatic momentum and solidify the collapse of the separatist project. And oh yeah, that's the next headline. I'm just going to show you it. The United States includes Morocco in advanced F-16 fighter jet manufacturing program last May. So why does China continue to support Morocco and whatnot? I don't really know. Because it just has to, right? It just has to. There's also this, I'll just show you this little headline. Because it was Mauritania and Morocco that the Polisario Front had to fight against when Spain relinquished its claims, because it used to be a Spanish colony, and then it said, Morocco, you can have it, which was bullshit, because that's promising someone else's territory to someone that doesn't deserve to have it, whatever. It's the same thing as saying that the Israelis could have the fucking Palestine because, whatever, wouldn't you like it if I had something to offer you, right? It's not yours to give, though. So I wasn't really trying to get into that. I'm just sort of saying, look at that headline. Not good. So I did have one more article. I did want to get to this one because I've read from Global Research before, and I like their work. But I think I've done a kind of put you guys through enough reading. I'll include it in the Discord if you guys are interested. But let me play this video here. And we'll see about closing up because we're almost at this 2-hour mark here. Yeah, we're over the 2-hour mark now. So Here we go. Let me just start it over. Let me know if there's any audio problems, please.
Electrified circles. The much anticipated $25 billion Nigeria-Morocco gas pipeline project has taken a giant leap forward. A dedicated company has now been established to oversee the scheme continues to expand, signaling that this once ambitious dream is moving closer than ever to becoming a reality. Could this be the moment when Africa demonstrates its ability to deliver a mega project that not only
Thank you, Sean. Yeah, Abby should be fine. She's actually probably more than okay. She's at a birthday party for her niece. I don't know if you maybe missed my mentioning it earlier, but she should be having fun. So, and so are we. This isn't so bad, right?
transforms its own economic destiny, but also reshapes energy flows across continents. The audacity of this vision, we must rewind to the spark that ignited it all, a bold pact forged in the fires of regional necessity and continental aspiration. Envisioned over a decade ago amid Nigeria's quest to unshackle its vast gas reserves from domestic confines, the Nigeria-Morocco gas pipeline emerged as an audacious antidote to energy silos. Nigeria, guardian of Africa's largest proven gas trove, over 200 trillion cubic feet buried beneath its soil, has long grappled with flaring flares and untapped potential, burning away wealth equivalent to entire economies while neighbors thirst for power. The vision? A grand conduit not merely for gas, but for unity, stitching West Africa's fragmented grids into a seamless tapestry, funneling Nigerian bounty northward to Morocco's shores and onward to
My bad. I muted myself. I was just saying, look what these fucking bastards do in these videos, right? Both the videos I was sharing you, they showed you Western Sahara as if it were part of Morocco when the dispute has not been fucking resolved. So they're just trying to fake it till they make it, okay? Fuck these people. They should get a little thing on their video that says misinformation, right? But they don't, because YouTube can go fuck itself. Anyway, back to the video. I just needed to make that little complaint. Oh, sorry.
Europe's voracious markets via the venerable Europe pipeline. It's a symphony where landlocked enclaves like Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali gain lifelines through feeder lines, and coastal kin share the feast. What began as a bold vision has gradually evolved into one of the largest infrastructure projects the world has ever seen, and now, with new structures of governance and Mali gain lifelines through feeder lines, and coastal kin share the feast. What began as a bold vision has gradually evolved into one of the largest infrastructure projects the world has ever seen, and now, with new structures of governance and financing in place.
God damn it, I did it again, didn't I? I muted myself, and then I stopped it and said a bunch of shit, whatever. I was just saying the language that this guy uses pisses me off in this video because he's talking about getting Nigeria's bounty to Europe and about the coastal kin sharing in the feast, right? That's the language of a comprador capitalist or whatever, just of an extractivist, right? That's not about someone who's trying to empower Nigeria or the people of West Africa.
Maghreb Europe pipeline. It's a symphony funneling Nigerian bounty northward to Morocco's shores and onward to Europe's voracious markets via the venerable Maghreb Europe pipeline. It's a symphony of self-reliance, where landlocked enclaves like Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali gain lifelines through feeder lines, and coastal kin share the feast. What began as a bold vision has gradually evolved into one of the largest infrastructure projects the world has ever seen, and now, with new structures of governance and financing in place, its realization appears more certain than ever. But how monumental is this pipeline when examined up close?
Work today.
Monumental. How monumental is it? Whatever. How impactful is it? Whatever. How harmful is it?
Of staggering proportions, designed to stretch and killers, snake its way along the West African coastline before linking up with Morocco and then the European market via the existing Maghreb Europe pipeline. To appreciate the sheer scale, consider this. 6,000 kilometers is 1,000 kilometers longer than the entire distance between Lagos and London. So this is
to
not...
appreciate the scale of how bad of an idea this is. Imagine how much materials you need to mine from the earth in order to build 6,000 kilometers of pipeline so that you can then extract even more materials from the earth and then pollute the atmosphere with it. There's no way that this is a sustainable project. But just like that fucking land bridge across from Alaska to Russia, while it sounds like a really great idea to a technocratic fucking eugenic dystopian moron, it's a disastrous, like, world-ending kind of an idea sort of thing. Like, if they did that, they would really fuck up the exchange of ocean water from the Arctic into the Pacific, right? So these projects don't come without an environmental cost, but in order to get them built at all, you have to suppress the information about the environmental cost, and you have to elevate the economic gains that you're supposedly going to get. But when you factor in the environmental cost, that completely erases the economic gains, because you have to then pay to fix the environment that you destroyed. So you end up not really making any money, and you build this fucking massive, grotesque, whatever, marvel of engineering, but what does it really do, whatever? It just helps people make currency that's just not really real to begin with. As real as it is, it's not real, whatever. We do all this damage for fake value, whatever, reified value, okay? But, you know, those of us who are not employed, those of us who or don't have a degree in something or other, we're never very smart. You should never listen to us.
Just a pipeline. It is a continent-spanning artery of energy designed to transport between 15 and 30 billion cubic meters of natural gas per year. Along its route, it will serve 13 West African coastal states, including Nigeria, Benin, Togo, Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, Liberia, Sierra Leone, Guinea, Guinea-Bissau, the Gambia, Senegal, Mauritania, and Morocco, while landlocked countries like Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali will be linked through domestic connection.
It's really hard not to miss the problem here with the pretending like Western Sahara doesn't exist, when it's like was a frozen conflict for 50 years, and now it's regaining media attention and everything because the ceasefire collapsed and everything, and then now you're going to pretend like it doesn't exist, right? That's kind of criminal. And you're going to look at all these tiny little countries or whatever as if these countries deserve to have their sovereignty, and then this much larger chunk of the Western Sahara or whatever it's supposed to be 14 countries that it would benefit from, but they want to keep it at that nice number 13, right?
In total, the pipeline is expected to provide direct energy access to some 400 million people, an achievement that could redefine the future of energy security on the African continent. What does it mean for a single project to carry the promise of impacting hundreds of millions of lives across multiple nations?
Yes,
The creation of a pipeline is an equally significant milestone.
This one too.
Why? Because such a company is more than just an administrative formality. It is the very backbone of the project. This framework, approved by the ECOWAS, ensures that no single link in the chain is left weak. The company's formation signals to investors and governments alike.
So that's another part that's worth pausing at. Notice the defiance of the AES towards the ECOWAS. They were ready to go to war with them, I thought, not so long ago. But if they're going to make a rapprochement with Morocco, sounds like your enemies that you were ostensibly against are benefiting from your choices. Maybe you haven't noticed that. Maybe you should.
That this project is organized, serious, and moving into execution mode. Without structure, could a project of this scale and complexity even be possible?
Oh my God.
This is our project management team.
Apparently, or whatever, we're giving them some good.
Behind the scenes, the question of who builds such a limited and Morocco's National Office of Hydrocarbons and Mines are at the helm, guiding a coalition of technical partners and stakeholders. Togo has also officially joined as a public partner, with additional countries expected to formalize participation. The final investment decision, anticipated by the end of 2025, will be the ultimate green light for full-scale construction to commence. Until then, technical studies have been finalized, routes confirmed, and governance structures established, meaning the pieces of the puzzle are steadily coming together. Could 2026 mark the year when the world begins to witness the physical construction of one of the longest pipelines in human history?
We would hope not.
Financing such an endeavor is, of course, no less monumental. Heavyweights like the European Investment Bank, the Islamic Development Bank, and the OPEC Fund already committed. More recently, the United Arab Emirates has joined this pool of financiers, reflecting growing confidence.
So that's the first time I actually ever saw the UAE flag.
More recently, the United Arab Emirates has
good. Okay, anytime you got the EU bank and the UAE and the US, wherever, declaring that Moroccan sovereignty, whatever, is much more important and all that. Not good at all. But what I wanted to just point out about this flag is, look how similar it is to the Palestinian flag. It's kind of disturbing. Like the only difference is the black and the green are reversed. And the Palestinian flag, the black's on top and the green's on the bottom, and it's a triangle instead of like a rectangle here. But just so gross how someone directly participating in the genocide against Gaza could, and the West Bank could have their flag look almost like a brother, you know? Those flags don't mean shit, right?
reflecting growing confidence in the project's feasibility and promise. These backers bring not only money but credibility, signaling to markets worldwide that this is a project with the power to succeed. With the final investment decision expected by late 2025, momentum.
Sorry, Jack, I'm not sure what you're saying. Is this map in this video ad coming up with a rainbow colors representing the different African nations for any specific? I missed that part. So maybe it's just a coincidence that the ad happened to be LGBTQ themed, or maybe it's never a coincidence when they're tracking all of everything we do and say and trying to sell ourselves back to us.
The question is not whether the project viable, but rather how quickly Africa and its partners can mobilize the massive resources necessary to bring it to life. The benefits of this pipeline, once completed, are vast and transformative. For Nigeria, the immediate implication is billions of dollars in new revenue. With gas exports no longer limited to LNG terminals or regional pipelines, Nigeria could finally monetize its massive reserves on a scale commensurate with their size. This project is not just about exports, it is about economic sovereignty. It will also create thousands of jobs, stimulate industries linked to construction and energy, and provide reliable gas for domestic power generation, helping to address Nigeria's chronic electricity shortages.
I'm a little bit confused as to how a massive pipeline going through the Atlantic provides domestic energy supply. Pretty sure that's a different type of infrastructure that you would build that has nothing to do with shipping the energy away from the country. Okay. But anyway, I think we're all pretty stupid, eh?
Could this project finally unlock Nigeria's long-touted potential as a true energy superpower?
Infantry joins large-scale battle.
Damn it. So many ads or whatever. Doesn't normally give you that many back-to-back like that, but I guess it knows we're paying attention, eh?
For West Africa, the pipeline promises more than just transit fees or energy supply. It offers the possibility of real industrialization powered by reliable gas. Countries along the route will gain improved access to affordable energy, opening doors for new industries, businesses, and services. Energy poverty, which has long been a barrier to development, could be dramatically reduced in a region home to hundreds of millions. For Morocco, the project strengthens its role as a continental and international energy hub.
Could be.
Poverty, which has long been a barrier to development, could be dramatically reduced in a and services. Energy poverty, which has long been a barrier to development, could be dramatically reduced in a region home to
could be, but probably won't be. Sorry.
To hundreds of millions. For Morocco, the project strengthens its role as a continental and international energy hub, cementing its strategic value as a bridge between Africa and Europe. And for Europe, struggling to secure alternative energy supplies amid geopolitical tensions, Nigerian gas flowing through Morocco could become a lifeline, diversifying energy sources and reducing dependence on other suppliers. Is it any wonder that international financial institutions are lining up behind such a transformative project?
Oh, I see what you mean now, Jack. It was the map with all the colorful countries. Where is it? There, that one. Yeah, that's very colorful, isn't it? That's all the colors on the rainbow flag represented, right? And then this is the, I don't know if you guys can see my cursor, but there's very telling absence of a label here with just a lack of a seam, like a proper border here. It's that quiet part that's not being said out loud. So yeah, thanks for noticing that. I bet you that is deliberately chosen as a kind of dog whistle towards the LGBT capitalists that might get tricked by this kind of propaganda. So let me just get back to where I was there. And this other map, ridiculous. Talking about being a bridge between Africa and Europe. Look at the rest of the coast, whatever, as if they're the only possible choice for a bridge between Africa and Europe. I feel like Algeria and Libya and Egypt make a better bridge. Although I guess Morocco and the Gibraltar Strait, whatever, that is the shortest kind of point across the Mediterranean. But for a lot of African nations, whatever, it makes no sense to go all the way out to the west or whatever. If the more direct route would be just straight north, right? Anyway.
In Europe. And for Europe, struggling to secure alternative energy supplies amid geopolitical tensions, Nigerian gas flowing through Morocco could become a lifeline, diversifying energy sources and reducing dependence on other suppliers. Is it any wonder that international financial institutions are lining up behind such a transformative project?
Is it any wonder that international capitalists, globalists, are salivating over an opportunity that's really actually very completely unrealistic?
Ultimately, the Morocco gas pipeline is more than just steel pipes buried in the ground. It is a vision of what Africa can achieve when ambition.
That's like that technocratic gaslighting, the altruistic gaslighting, you might call it. Although there's not much altruism, I think, actually contained in it. But they're trying to say, by building this project, you would prove Africans that you guys are just as capable as white people and Asian people of building massive investment in infrastructure projects, and that would prove that you guys are just as good as the rest of us. You need to build a massive destruction of your environment to prove how good you are. Otherwise, you're not as good as the rest of us. I mean, yes, they want to develop their infrastructure, but it has to be rational infrastructure that does not ignore ecological kind of assessments. And this is exactly the kind of project that pretends like it does an ecological assessment or whatever, but then it makes a mockery of that process.
Needs more. It needs more daring, transformative projects that shift narratives from dependency to leadership, from untapped potential to real power. Nigeria and Morocco possible. The Nigeria-Morocco gas pipeline is one step closer to reality, and perhaps so too is the dream of a more prosperous, more connected, and more confident Africa. Your perspective matters. What do you make of the $25 billion Nigeria-Morocco gas pipeline?
Well, thank you for acknowledging that my perspective matters, but I think I've made clear what I make of this gaslighting pipeline or whatever, this gaslighting video. So yeah, that's those are my thoughts, not yours. It was something one of the old Detroit anchors used to say on the radio stations used to listen to. But that's enough of that. I think I am all done with my little show here. I don't think I got anything left to share. Except for that article, it's too long to get back into. I think I've already covered everything in enough detail. So thanks for being with me, guys. That's it for us this week. We'll see you again on Tuesday. Shame that Abby couldn't be here, but that's all right. She'll most likely catch it on the rewind and let me know what she thinks. But it's all good. I had you guys to hang out with me, so thanks. Yeah, sounds good, Sean. That's what I'm saying. Now is the time to be paying attention. Like all of Africa is, like I said, I opened up with the beginning about there's shit happening in Ethiopia. There's shit happening in South Sudan, and Americans are getting increasingly involved in the Congo and in Sudan and in Sahel states here in Nigeria, right? So the scramble for Africa is back. You know, for not for better, for worse, for worse or for worse, right? So this is where I think it's now more than ever important for China and Russia to have a principled anti-colonial approach, an anti-imperial approach. And if they actually do that, then they cannot be benefiting materially, financially, by siding with nations like the UAE and Morocco at the expense of like a genuine struggle for the national liberation, right? For the anti-imperialist socialist projects. I'm really hoping that China's doing the strategic thing or whatever. They're just doing what they have to in the meantime. But then I would hope that in the next few years that it becomes increasingly clear that they have to make a decisive break from the capitalist oriented economies, because they're going to ultimately fail to achieve their communist dream for China. They could have an economic unraveling if they fail to help other nations achieve their genuine sovereignty and independence. It's that quote I guess I'll have to leave you with maybe I'll look it up here so that I can say it properly. Because it's first they came for the communists, right? That's my little lesson to China. Okay, first they came for Libya, then they came for Syria, and then they came for Palestine, and then they came for West Sahara, and I didn't. So, and I did not speak out, right? And then they came for China. So here it is. It's first they came for the communists, and I did not speak out because I was not a communist. Then they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me. Okay, so it's a little bit complicated with the ending of it, but the Zionists are coming for the Jews now all over again. So let's stop pretending to be revolutionary and let's start, doing the right thing. If we can't be revolutionary, at least let's make the compromise of doing the right thing. So yeah. Thanks, guys. Have a good night and have a good weekend. And if we treat life like it's a game or a race, the war will be endless, and tomorrow is not today. Okay? Have a good night.